There is something seriously wrong with this person, and I don't mean to be harsh, but woman spent £11,000 learning to drive, passed her driving test after 960 attempts. That is unbelievable. This one hits really close to home for me. I've spent 4 years as a driving instructor. I know how this works. If you're a good instructor, if you're teaching students to drive, they should pass their test within 2, 3, 4 attempts. Most of them should pass first time if they're getting good instruction. Personally, as a driving instructor, the worst I had was 4, possibly 5 attempts at doing a driving test. And I've heard horror stories of people doing 8, 9, 10 attempts at their driving test. But 960? That's just crazy. I once heard of a young guy who had taken about 30 attempts. Ugh. And I personally had a student come to me after she had failed her test 9 times on her own with her mum and dad, and then realised, hey, I think I need to get some professional help here. I taught her to drive, and then she went and got her licence the next time round. So it was her 10th go by that stage. Cha Sa-soon from South Korea persevered until she passed her driving test. Well, she's certainly got some staying power, that's for sure. A woman who spent £11,000 getting her driving licence, finally succeeding on her 960th attempt, has risen to prominence again, almost 15 years after her story made international headlines. What story is that? Cha Sa-soon's story had been reshared on Reddit, where it has garnered attention due to her tenacity in chasing her driving licence. She took her first attempt at the written test in April of 2005. But unfortunately was not successful. However, the South Korean was not deterred and continued to retake it until she passed, sitting the exam every day, 5 days a week, over 3 years. That's crazy. So this is just the written test. She took it every day of the week for 5 days a week for 3 years. She'd be like part of the staff. She'd walk into the Department of Transport and did she have her own office there? Did she take her lunch? They would have known her on a first name basis. That is crazy. She then reduced this to just twice a week, so she went part-time, until she finally passed the written test on her 860th attempt. This is just the written test, 860 times. Here in Australia, to do your driving licence, the Department of Transport put out 2 books. One of them's called Drive Safe, which is basically the road rules book, which is the one this lady would have needed to read in order to pass the written test. Basically, you read the book, you memorise the road rules, and you pass the test. Then the second book is called How to Pass Your Driving Assessment, which is basically how to drive the car to the standard that they expect of you to be able to pass your driving test. So she's not even on to this one yet. She's just doing her written test 860 times. Every day of the week, 5 days a week, for 3 years. This woman has got some comprehension problems or some learning difficulties because the test is really just a case of learning to memorise the road rules, understanding and comprehending the road rules, and you're given a multiple choice question test. Statistically, you could probably pass it just guessing some of the questions. You can actually get quite a lot of questions wrong and still pass the test as well. To be doing this every day of the week, 5 days a week for 3 years, how is she not learning from her mistakes and thinking, no, that's the wrong answer. Next time I get that same question, give the other answer. It's crazy. You can even practice the test online. Most students, prior to doing their test, would run through the dummy questions online a few times until they realise that they can get it right, and then go and pay for doing the test. So this woman's paid to do her test 860 times, and it's cost her about £11,000. Once she had that under her belt, she moved on to the practical test, which would also prove to be a challenge. I think she'd find it difficult to find a driving instructor to take her. If you were like, oh, hey, I've got my learner's permit, it took me 860 times to get it, I think I understand the road rules now, they'd be like, I'm really busy for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I can't fit you in. So this is the lady here. Cha Sa-soon, pictured from South Korea, had to take her driving theory test hundreds of times and her practical test 10 times before finally getting her license. Some people really should just use public transport. And I'm not saying that to be cruel. It's reality. Driving is dangerous. And if you're just not getting it, then the road is probably not the safest place for you to be, and for other people to be around you when you're on the road if you're really struggling to understand the concepts of driving. Cha Sa-soon had to take the test 10 times. This is after she obviously understands the road rules by now, bringing the total number of driving examinations up to 960 between the written and practical elements. The cost of this was some £12,500 or £11,000 according to reports. That's actually quite cheap. 11,000 divided by 960 times is only about $11 or £11 per test. That's actually quite reasonable. Some countries you'd pay a lot more than that. Here in Australia, if you fail your test and you need to redo it, it's $100. She'd be up for tens of thousands of dollars here. The cost of this was some £11,000 according to reports. However, she didn't give up despite the expense, as she needed to be able to drive for her vegetable selling business. You're going to have to sell a lot of carrots and potatoes to make back this £11,000. According to Cha Sa-soon's driving instructor, when she finally passed, it was a huge burden off their backs. Yeah. The instructor at Geo-Buck Driving School said, when she finally got her license, we all went out cheering and hugged her, giving her flowers. Yeah. It felt like a huge burden falling off our backs. We hadn't had the guts to tell her to quit because she kept showing up. Yeah. Is that ethical? Again, as a driving instructor, I think if somebody can't drive and they're really struggling, you need to have a very serious conversation with them. Cha Sa-soon's story made international headlines due to her tenacity, making her a national celebrity. She was even gifted a brand new vehicle worth $13,000 or £11,500 by a South Korean car manufacturer, Hyundai. Well, there you go. You fail your driving test that many times, Hyundai's going to step in and give you a brand new car. She's actually in front. She spent $11,000 to get a license, but now she's got $11,500 or pound car, so she's in front. Her story recently resurfaces on Reddit, prompting people to share their thoughts on her roadworthiness. Yeah, I'll share my thoughts as a professional driving instructor. I mean, at the end of the day, she's passed now and she's got her license, and so the Department of Transportation, whatever the equivalent is in South Korea, have vetted her and said, yes, she's ready to be on the road, but I'd be very nervous putting somebody on the road who has clearly shown they have some comprehension issues understanding the road rules. One Redditor wrote, I believe if you take a test nearly 1,000 times, you might have the whole thing committed to memory at that point. I mean, seriously, she's turning up every day of the week, 5 days a week for 3 years, doing the same test over and over. Yeah, it should be committed to memory. She should actually know the road rules better than the people that write the book. A further commenter wrote, but now that she's passed a very specific driving situation under ideal circumstances, surely she's fully capable of driving a deaf machine under all types of conditions, right? Yeah, kind of hit the nail on the head there. Sometimes you may find you just get lucky with your driving test. You manage to get every green light. There's no pedestrians walking in front of you. No other vehicles are pulling out in front of you. Nobody's cutting you off at the roundabout. Yeah, great, so you pass your test. What happens in the real world when those things do happen to you? How do you react and respond? Another wrote 960 times? That sounds like a systemic failure. It wastes everyone's time. If you don't have a mandatory 1 month or 1 week wait period. Otherwise, you just have people coming back and trying to shotgun the test over and over again instead of study. Yeah, true. If you've got somebody sitting in a seat every day of the week for 3 years doing the test, then there are people who can't do the test because of capacity limitations. Should they make her wait a week between each test? Go home, study the book. You're wasting your time and hours. But a more sympathetic forum user said they felt slightly sad, and they assumed Cha Sa-soon had no one to help her to prepare for the test. They wrote, fall 950 times, get up 960. But seriously, this kind of makes me sad. Did she not have anyone to help her study? We don't know. Clearly not. But the practical test is something you have to do on your own. You can't always have somebody in the car with you, driving with you. You're not always going to have your instructor with you. You're not always going to have your mum and dad if you're a young student. You got to be able to drive the car on your own. And lives are at stake. This is serious business. What are your thoughts? If someone takes close to 1,000 times to pass their driving test, should they be on the road? Is this a disaster waiting to happen? Or do you think she's proven that she can do the test, therefore she should be safe? Let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback on this one. Subscribe to the channel for more.